Welcome to another edition of Africa Sideways. Today we're going to be counting down the top 10 4x4s for under $3,000. We started at $10,000, took it down to $5,000. Now we're starting to get into the cheapies. $3,000 trucks, off-road ready, must have decent abilities, grade 2, grade 3 off-road. Doesn't necessarily have to have low range, but that's normally an advantage. And it must be cheap and cheerful and have a certain amount of street appeal. Bit of cool factor is always important, especially for younger people. Better $3,000 a pop. How much cool can you get? So at number 10, starting off with something proudly American, the Chevy Blazer. When Chevys were still making relatively reliable cars in the late 90s, early 2000s. The later model to this, the Trailblazer, doesn't quite have such favorable reviews online. This gets about 4.3 stars out of 5 for reliability, which is not bad, which is actually pretty good for an American car. Nice big vehicle. It's got the 4.3 liter V6, which is pretty reliable. If you look after that, you'll likely get about 300,000-400,000 miles out of that engine if you're lucky. Loads of power, lots of space, 4-wheel drive, pretty good off-road ability. Don't expect to be doing any rock crawling, but for your average weekend away, loads of space for camping. Doesn't quite have that Japanese reliability, but it's good enough for number 10 on the list. Number 9. A car that O.J. Simpson made very famous on his race down the highway with half of Los Angeles behind him. The Ford Bronco, early 80s, early to mid 80s. You can pick a nice one of these up for around $3,000. They're really cool looking. I think they might be a bit of a collector's item in the future if you can get one that hasn't been too badly abused. But being a two-door, good departure and entry angles, good off-road. Probably not going to be that good on steep uphill because the wheelbase is not as long as some of the other cars. But loads of power, and it's a Ford, so it's always going to have a bit of a cult following. But it's a bit of a gas guzzler, so it's not going to be really good for long overland trips, but for weekends away and just looking for a cheap way to get into four-wheeling, the Broncos, always an option. Number 7, moving into the Japanese stable, we've got the first generation Mitsubishi Pajero, which is also known as the Montero. You can pick a nice one of these up for about $3,000. It comes in a 2-door and a 4-door model. Don't expect good fuel economy. I think both the petrol and the diesel aren't that economical, but for this sort of price, $2,500-3,000, what do you expect? What you get is a body on frame, solid build quality, good reliable engine as long as it's been maintained, and pretty comfy and cool. I like the boxy shape. You can put different rims on, and some of them have quite retro paint jobs, which is always good in my book. So, also multiple time winner of the Paris-Dakar. Well, the second generation Pajero is more known for its Paris-Dakar exploits, but the first generation has also completed the race. One thing about Mitsubishi's, parts sometimes can be a little bit hard to come by, especially on the first generation ones, and they're all imported from Japan, so it can be a little expensive. So something like this is good to have. You have like a Toyota Corolla as you run around, and then you have the Pajero on the weekends. Work very well. Number 6 on the list, the 1990 Nissan Pathfinder, which is very similar to the Nissan Sani, which was available in South Africa. The American Pathfinder version came out with a 3.3 liter V6, when the one in South Africa came out in a 3 liter V6, the same engine that was in the Nissan 300 ZX, my favorite sports car of all time. the build quality on this particular Nissan Pathfinder is much better than the later editions of Nissan when they started to partner up with Renault, and some of their reliability issues started filtering into Nissan, which up to that date, up to the 1990s, had been known to have Toyota reliability. So if you can get one of the old Nissan Pathfinders, cheap and cheerful way to get into it. It looks a little bit dorky, but definitely you can mod it up. Good for overlanding, pretty economical, good payload, cheap to run, relatively cheap to insure, but it's so cheap. That's a lot of cheaps. But anyway, Nissan Pathfinder, good enough for number 6 on the list. Good off-roadability, good space, good comfort, a good all-around vehicle. Good enough for number 6. Number 5 on the list, the godfather of SUVs, a godfather that is quite a small little dude, but a godfather nevertheless, and that is the RAV4, the 3-door RAV4 from the mid-90s. And to my mind, that was the first SUV. It was the first car company that brought out something that wasn't body on frame, didn't have low range, but still had clearance and a 4-wheel drive system that was really good in the city and good off-road. The first generation's RAV4s had excellent clearance and probably are still the best off-road out of all the RAV4s produced. You look at the new RAV4 and it's got a long nose and not great angles for off-roading. This was the real deal. The 1996 RAV4, good enough for number 5 on the list. Bulletproof reliability, strong engine, strong gearboxes, strong everything. Number 4 on the list, we've got another Mitsubishi Pajero, but this is now the IQ, the little 1800. Fantastic little vehicle. This has got low range, excellent off-roadability. It's probably got as good, if not better, off-roadability as the big Pajero. You can pick them up pretty cheaply, easily for about $3,000. The 1800 engine is frugal, easy to work on and reliable, and for that reason it comes in at number 4 on the list. Top 3 time, ladies and gentlemen, and you might be surprised what number 3 is, because it was the winner of our 5,000 Rand shootout, $5,000 SUV shootout. But for under $3,000, you're going to struggle to find a low mileage one that hasn't been cooked a bit. So for that reason, the Jeep Cherokee XJ comes in at number 3 on the list, for the sole reason that to get a decent one for under $3,000 is probably going to be north of 200,000 miles. It might well have been poked off-road. So reliability might be a slight issue there. I know the 4-liter straight 6 is a very strong engine, but some people have complained about some other niggles on the vehicle. But for a weekend warrior, for $3,000, if you don't mind buying one with a few dings in it, the XJ Cherokee has got you covered. Whew. Getting to the top 2, getting to the boardroom, the business end of this shootout, the best 4x4s under $3,000. It can only be the first or the second generation Suzuki Grand Vitara. You can definitely get a mint first generation one for under $3,000. This is a car where you can get something with 100,000 miles on it, where some of the other ones you're buying sort of the bottom of the barrel version just to sneak in on that number. But first generation Suzuki Grand Vitara, low range, great off-roadability, easily modified. You can put a 2-inch lift on there, easy engine to work on. Parts sometimes can be a little bit of a tricky thing to get hold of, but for that price, to get something with under 200,000 miles that looks really cool, first generation Suzuki Grand Vitara is good enough for number 2 on the list. So what's going to be number 1? Number 1, best 4x4 under $3,000. It's a dark horse that flew under the radar on the $5,000 challenge, but comes in swinging at number 1, the Toyota 4Runner from the early 90s, also known as the Hilux Surf. Came with that extremely strong 3.4 litre Toyota petrol engine, one of the strongest petrol engines ever made. Bit of a gas guzzler, but it's not as bad as some of the other cars on the list. Extremely strong, lots of space, excellent off-road ability, low range, good payload, loads of parts. Parts is really accessible, so if you're driving through Africa, it's not going to be a problem getting parts and maintenance for this truck. And it just looks really, really cool. And you can still pick them up relatively cheaply. And for that reason, the Toyota 4Runner comes in at numero uno, number 1 on the best 4x4s for under $3,000. Let me know what you think below. Have I missed anything? Are there any Looney Tunes on this list? And if you'd like to donate to this channel, please hit the $sign below. And we'll catch you next time on Africa Sideways. Peace.